We're an island nation, drawn to the sea that surrounds us. A playground for some. For others, it's where they make their living. But the sea's unpredictable.
It's like a wild animal. You can't tame it.
There to save our lives is a volunteer army of over 5,000 ordinary people, ready to leave their jobs, their families, and race to our rescue.
When the pages go off, we have to prepare for absolutely anything.
No, no, no! You do go out fearing the worst.
Once I could see the orange, I knew we were okay.
We're with you, we're with you!
Equipped with their own cameras.
Good afternoon. Stay where you are, yeah? We're going to come to you!
The crews give us a unique insight into every call-out.
I thought I was going to die!
As only they see it.
I've got you, I've got you.
For those who risk their lives, it has become a way of life.
Saving someone's life is phenomenal.
Let's let go!
There is nothing more rewarding.
Hold on!
In Dorset, on the eastern edge of the Jurassic coast, lies the port town of Swanage.
Swanage is pretty much dead south of England, and it's just west of the Isle of Wight.
Originally a small fishing village, demand for its local limestone after the Great Fire of London transformed it into a significant quarrying port.
The coastline around Swanage is called the Jurassic Coast. It's been through 2 ice ages, so it's Purbeck limestone. All the rock for St Paul's Cathedral came from Swanage.
As demand for limestone dwindled in Victorian times, Swanage became better known as a seaside resort, an identity which continues to this day.
Through the summer months, it's very busy. There's a lot of activity. Paddleboarders, kayakers, walkers, every form of water activity, I think, happens in Swanage Bay.
And the same limestone that once turned Swanage into a quarry port now brings climbing enthusiasts from far and wide.
It attracts a lot of people because there's plenty of difficult climbs that people like to be able to challenge themselves on.
It's not my cup of tea. I see them up there all the time when I'm fishing, and yeah, rather them than me.
Keeping a vigilant watch over all this activity for almost 150 years now is Swanage Lifeboat Station.
Swanage Lifeboat Station was first established back in 1875, so it's one of the oldest stations in the country.
We have people who are taking part in what might be called risky activities. The vast majority of them are highly skilled and experienced, but accidents happen. And when they do happen, they can be in some very difficult and inaccessible places.
Early afternoon, end of January. An emergency call comes in to the Coast Guard.
Coast Guard rescue. I've got a climber at Subliminal Cliff just by the lighthouse on Dorset Head with a compound fracture to the ankle.
Okay, do you know her?
My wife.
It's your wife, okay.
Durlston Head is a stretch of coastline close to the lighthouse at Anvil Point, over a mile to the south of the station.
Anvil Point is right on the corner of the Purbeck sticking out to sea. It's a big limestone cliff. And it's got a big lighthouse and a castle on top of it.
At that point, we didn't know whether the climber was in the sea, at the bottom of the cliff, at the top of the cliff, conscious, unconscious, so it was just a fallen climber with a broken leg, and her husband had left her to go and call for help.
As the exact position of the casualty is unclear, the Coast Guard's specialist rope team is also dispatched to location at the same time as Swanage's D-class and all-weather lifeboats launch.
Coast Guard. Roger, the information, the casualty is a 65-year-old female.
As we were coming across Dalston Bay, the Coast Guard told us that the climber was hanging just off the top of the cliff, past the castle. My concerns were, how bad's the injury? We don't know any of that until we actually get there.
There. Is that her?
Yeah.
Who wants someone down there? Is it down or you?
It's her. It's purple and white.
Is it you in trouble or someone down there?
This person, okay. When we arrived, we could see the casualty suspended on the rope right at the top of the cliff, I mean, probably 60 to 70 feet above where we were. I remember turning around to the guys and saying, well, this one's not for us, is it? There's nothing we can do up there. It was literally right at the top of the cliff. So it's not going to be us, is it? It's going to be coasties. We stand by when the Coast Guard are working at the top, carrying out the rescue. The Coast Guard are on their way!
Sure enough, minutes after the lifeboat arrives by sea, the Coast Guard rope team appear at the top of the cliff.
The initial plan was to do what we call an immediate rescue. An immediate rescue is deployed when there is a potential risk to life. In this situation, the casualty has been suspended for a period of time, potentially for about 45 minutes before we were called, and then maybe another 15 minutes before we were ready to go over the cliff to rescue her, so that you look at an hour at that point.
As Kerry and her team set up at the top of the cliff, down at the bottom, the lifeboat crew checks to see if they can get ashore to possibly help with the rescue.
Our all-weather lifeboat had arrived behind us, and as we had a bit of time, we just sort of went in up to the cliff and had a look. We could access the area directly below the casualty if the Coast Guard wanted to lower down rather than lower up.
Sensing they may yet have a part to play in this rescue, the D-Class hurries back to the Shannon to collect a stretcher and a medical kit. As high on the cliff, Kerry makes a key decision.
I could see the line of sight down the actual cliff to see that I could go straight down and be extracted with the lifeboat.
Just sit it there and just slide the stretcher straight across.
The plan to evacuate the casualty by sea comes over the radio. And the lifeboat moves closer to the cliffs, ready to transfer both crew and equipment ashore.
There's a rock just there.
The biggest problem getting onto the cliff is obviously the rocks are very sharp and the boat's made of rubber. Contact with the cliffs can, lead into a few problems.
I can step straight off the bow onto that ledge there.
Phil moves to the bow of the boat, ready to jump ashore.
The worst thing can happen in this manoeuvre is actually you fall backwards into the water and the boat come back in and pin you between the rock and the boat itself.
So you're going over the bow.
What is it down there?
Oh, he's in.
It's one of those things you just got to get on and do it.
With Phil now in position, Becky passes him the stretcher. While at the top of the cliff, Kerry commits to her descent.
Cliff tech. Out, safety only. Cliff tech taking south over cliff, over.
I took control myself and lowered myself over the cliff.
Safety only, over.
From the base of the cliff, I could see the cliff technician coming over the edge, dropping her ropes down to the casualty, abseiling down next to them.
When I got to her, she seemed very calm, considering her injuries. It was an open fracture of her lower left leg. There was a fair amount of blood, and it looked incredibly painful. I was concerned that the casualty may go unconscious.
With the casualty still losing blood, Kerry knows she needs to get her as quickly and safely as possible down to the bottom of the cliff, where Becky is now joining Phil on the narrow limestone ledge.
You ready?
Yeah. We got the stretcher ready and then just looked up and waited for the casualty to be lowered down. Oh wow, that is pretty bad.
What?
The ankle.
She was in quite a lot of pain, but she was managing this very, very well.
The red on top of her boot, that's blood.
It was only when she got lowered a little bit further down that we could actually see that it was an open wound and there was actually blood dripping from the injury.
It looks pretty bad, so we're going to definitely need...
As the casualty started to move, the dripping of blood got a bit quicker, and one bit hit me straight on the top of the helmet.
Watch, yeah.
Once I got to the bottom of the cliff with the casualty, the lifeboat crew were able to get their stretcher completely underneath us. I was able to stand on a ledge and, using our rope rescue system, lower the casualty straight down into the lifeboat stretcher.
I'm going to stand behind you, Kerry, so I can help.
I had to hold the stretcher with my knee as I guided the cliff technician and the casualty into the stretcher.
With the casualty now at the base of the cliff, the crew administer Entonox, or gas and air, to help ease her obvious pain.
Take a big, wait a few seconds, then do another one.
You have to take her up here.
Yes. Yeah, we'll stay here. We've got 2 more in the boat.
It's quite a painful experience, breaking anything, and that gas and air takes the edge off and allows us to gently get her into a stretcher.
The crew work quickly on the narrow and now very crowded ledge to get the casualty, Polly, securely strapped into the stretcher, ready to be transferred to the lifeboat.
Yeah, so I'm here, Polly, OK? Don't worry. Don't worry.
Every time we moved, the stretcher moved a little bit, which I think understandably put the casualty at edge.
OK, sorry, it's rocking because it's just on a tilt.
Right. I'm sure that's pretty disconcerting when you're led in a stretcher. You can see the sea around you and you know that the ledge is not even as wide as the stretcher.
Put your head between those 2 things and just relax.
I'll guide you back on that. You've just got your chalk.
If it hurts, stop and we'll come back up to seating, OK? Just try and lay back for me.
I can't see the 2 things.
That's fine. Becky will lay you back.
I can lay you back, so that's fine.
The casualty was pretty amazing. Despite clearly having a serious injury, she was really calm. Obviously, she was in pain.
Oh, you all right?
But she was able to answer our questions so that we could explain to her how we were going to get her from the cliff.
Now, what you want to do before we give you a count is take a really big suck on it because it is going to wobble as we carry you over, OK?
Now strapped into the stretcher, Polly will be helpless if she falls into the sea, so the crew have to be exceptionally careful as they prepare for the most difficult part of their rescue.
Polly, can you still hear me?
Yeah,
OK.
On Daisy's call,
We're going to transfer you onto the boat, so if you want to take another big suck now.
There was a little bit of swell and a bit of tide running that meant that every now and then you're getting slightly bigger waves that was just crashing up.
Hold on, we're a bit swell on.
If a wave came, Tom would be unable to stop that boat moving, and the casualty could fall off the side of the boat or between the boat and the cliff.
You must have really good communication between the people on the cliff and the people on the boat, and to slide that stretcher onto the ILB.
OK, go! All right, don't worry, you're fine. OK, we've got it. OK, you're right, darling?
At this point, the casualty was balanced across the 2 sponsons.
You all right, Polly? Just keep sucking on that Entonox, darling, all right? We'll be home in a minute. You OK? Well done, you're doing really well.
So the D-class gently took the casualty out to the all-weather lifeboat, where she could be put inside and more comfortable to be transferred the mile journey back to the lifeboat station.
Just come forward.
Back at the lifeboat station, the air ambulance is waiting to transfer Polly to Southampton Hospital. A dramatic end to what had begun as a relaxing day of climbing with her husband, Hugh.
We go to climb at Swanage as much as we can. For me, it's my favourite place to climb, actually. I started rock climbing about, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago. It's that combination of adventure, skill, and also like the fact that you have to work something out. I've actually abseiled down the cliff in that exact spot many times. So I wasn't kind of worried about it in any way. I was just happy, excited. Hugh went down the abseil first, and he got to the bottom and then he called up. So I kind of went over the edge. I was absolutely fine. I was actually expecting a slight swing on the rope. And sure enough, it happened.
I saw her swing, and before I'd even sort of managed to understand what was going on, she cried out quite loudly and shouted down to me, "Hugh, I've broken my leg, I've broken my leg."
Polly's foot had caught in a crevice, causing her ankle to snap as her body swung wide on the rope.
I wasn't in pain at all initially. I just saw it, and it was immediately obvious it was broken. I mean, you couldn't have thought anything else. I knew I couldn't continue abseiling down, and I knew it was potentially dangerous.
Hugh tried calling 999, but had no phone signal at the bottom of the cliff, and the rope he needed to climb back up still had Polly attached to it, and so was too risky to use.
Because she had such a serious injury, if I was to ascend that rope, the rope would have been jerking up and down under my body weight all the time. And I think that would have been very high risk for Polly.
Hugh decided his only option was to commit to a solo climb up the 90-foot cliff face, despite not having a rope.
If he'd fallen off, he definitely could have been killed, for sure.
All the time I was climbing, I was saying out loud, climb slowly, keep breathing. I was just repeating that as a mantra, just to slow myself down so that I was climbing carefully rather than rushing, because everything else wanted me to rush. Because I thought, I just got to get help as quickly as possible for Polly, and I just knew that if I rushed, that could then lead to me making a mistake, and that would have been catastrophic. I just focused on what I had to do. And it wasn't until I got to the top and made myself safe at the top of the cliff and looked down at Polly that then I began to think about her condition again and make sure she was all right. And then I remember there's a telephone which goes directly through to the Coast Guard, mounted on the wall of the lighthouse. I thought, God, I hope this phone is working. And it was.
I think if you're talking about people that saved a life, it would have been the husband.
Are you all right? You've done a lot of running around yourself today.
Yeah. Without his actions, we would never have turned up, and they would have been stuck there.
The most significant part of this rescue was the fact of the amazing teamwork between everybody that was involved. We had the Coast Guard there, we had HeliMed, we had paramedics, we had the lifeboats, and every team was involved.
That moment when they were passing the stretcher over the rocks and the teamwork and confidence with which they did that really impressed me. It was entirely a voluntary effort that rescued me. And I mean, that is amazing, isn't it? That's just such an amazing society we live in, actually, that people give up their own time to save other people. It just is awesome to me.
A couple of weeks after the shout, we got a nice card and a big basket of fruit from the casualty with some chocolate in it. We're very grateful for that. We don't do it for the fruit and chocolate.
In total, the RNLI is made up of over 35,000 individual volunteers, all working together on land and sea to save lives.
Teamwork's imperative, whatever you're doing, especially at sea.
So what we're going to do is we're going to bring you up onto the boat, okay?
Teamwork is the most important thing when we're out on the boat. We've all got individual tasks and jobs to do. Nothing can happen without the four of us or however many there are working together.
Contact!
I think lifeboating is quite unique in the way that, you know, it does bring together people from all different walks of life and bond them.
Hey, grab the wheel, mate.
Yeah, no worries, Pop.
You know, everyone has their strengths, everyone has their weaknesses, and you build your team accordingly.
Every single time we set foot in the boat, we need to be reliant on each other to work together. Everybody brings their own support and abilities to dealing with lifeboating, so we're reliant on everybody to do their bit.
The RNLI is one big family, one big team, we're one crew. We support each other off the boat and we look after each other.
On the upper reaches of the North Welsh coast lies the resort town of Rhyl.
Rhyl on a good day, if you get the weather, can be a stunning place to live. We've got huge, endless expanses of golden beaches.
We've got quite a diverse coastline. We've got everything from sandy beaches to rock groins to estuaries, and even further to the west we've got cliffs, so a bit of everything.
Rhyl, like many seaside towns, was a thriving place in the 60s and 70s. Went downhill quite drastically after that. Hit rock bottom probably 10, 15 years ago and is climbing back up there. We've got a lot of exciting stuff going on here now. We've got the new harbour development, new buildings, and so it's on its way up. Everything about it at the moment is encouraging.
There has been a lifeboat here for 170 years, the most recent being a D-class inshore lifeboat and a Shannon-class all-weather boat, launched from Rhyl Beach by the dedicated Shannon Launch and Recovery System, or SLARS.
The outfit that we're using now, the Shannon and the SLARS rig, is a lot more complex than the boat and the tractor and carriage that I was used to. You know, we used to think that had a lot of moving parts until we saw this.
One of the longest-serving crew members at Rhyl, Pete, retired from active boat service 6 years ago, but still helps out on land as a deputy launch authority, watching over the boat as well as his son Callum.
I joined in '89, which was the year Callum was born, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
Dad's been on the crew 33 years, so I'm coming up to 33, so he's been on longer than I've been around, really.
Callum hopes to follow in his father's footsteps and one day become coxswain, the chief of the boat.
So to think that he's going out there to help people who've perhaps not got it right is, you know, very gratifying. We're very, very proud of what he does, and everybody else here.
But do you tell him to his face a lot, or do you try and keep it quiet?
No, we don't want him to get big-headed, do we?
Dad's quite a strong character at the station and in life in general, really. He's quite well known around. Yeah, I think he misses going out on the boat a lot.
Terrible thing to see it going down that slipway and you're not on it.
Callum and the Rhyl lifeboat crew respond to around 60 shouts a year, mostly in the summer months, but also out of season when storms whip in off the Irish Sea.
The conditions in Rhyl, like most places on the sea, really can change very quickly.
Weather fronts come through, turning what was a quiet, benign trip into a struggle for survival at times.
You always have to be prepared in one way or another, whether it's prepared for breakdowns or prepared for the weather changing or anything, really.
Early November, late morning. Sunny but cold, and with a strengthening wind. Pete is walking his dog along Ryl's inner harbour wall when two men in a small inflatable dinghy catch his eye.
They'd launched the boat and were making their way across the harbour, and that was when I noticed that neither of them were wearing life jackets. So without life jackets, really, on a tender that size, you were taking a considerable risk. So I thought at that point I'd better keep an eye on these chaps until they get to where they're going. As I was making my way down the steps to get to there, I heard the lady who'd waved them off screaming that one of them was in the water and they were in trouble. One man was still in the boat and the other was in the water hanging onto a mooring buoy.
Pete immediately calls the Coast Guard, then son Callum, to give him the heads up that his pager is about to sound.
I was at home, Dad phoned me up. All he said was there's a person in the water in the harbour, so get down to the station quick and get the boat ready. Just as I was locking the door to get out, that's when the pagers went off.
Callum rushes to the station, where the inshore lifeboat is being readied for launch.
When you hear someone's in the water, there's definitely a strong sense of urgency. You know that you're needed as soon as possible.
But even as the crew hurry to launch the lifeboat, their former coxswain is already at location, watching on helplessly as the casualty clings to the mooring buoy and struggles to stay afloat.
His life was definitely at risk with what he was wearing, the fact that he was tangled in rope, and also the temperature of the water.
You've got the flow of the river flowing through the harbour, so that could take them away, and then you might not be able to find them, and then it's a search.
Do you want us to clear the slip as much as we can, Carl?
So yeah, time's of the essence, especially at that time of year when the water's near enough at its coldest.
With November sea temperatures averaging around 12 degrees, a person in the water can develop the first signs of hypothermia within half an hour. And though the harbour is only a mile from the station, the real crews sometimes face a 5-minute journey down to the water's edge. But today, the tide is high and luck seems to be with them.
We launched and got past the surf line.
Revved up the throttle and nothing happened. It felt as if the engine hasn't actually gone into gear. I was thinking at the time it would just be a quick engine lid off, knock it into gear, engine lid back on, and off we could go.
Just have a little bit of engine trouble at the moment, so we're just trying to get that fixed whilst we're on the water before we make best speed. We'll advise you once we're up and running and give you an ETA then, over.
Obviously there's someone in the water and we've got engine problems. They need to know that we're going to be slightly delayed. So we notified the Coast Guards as soon as possible.
What's the matter with it?
It's extremely frustrating when you know there's someone in trouble just a mile down the coast and you're dealing with a mechanical issue.
Yeah, the prop's spinning, but it's just not getting any load on it. It's just spinning frantically.
It felt more like the time was slowing down at that point because you're trying to diagnose the problem.
You're going to have to change the propeller.
With the powerless boat at the mercy of the rolling surf, the crew work fast to try and fix the problem, keenly aware that the casualty has now been in the cold November sea for almost 20 minutes and counting.
Lifeboats always carry a lot of spares, even the small inshore boat. For that exact reason, if the prop fails like it did, there's a spare.
In order to stop the boat from drifting back to shore and also give them more stability as they attempt the repair, Callum instructs the crew to drop anchor.
Put about 10 metres out for now and see how it holds.
It's quite an awkward thing to fix the engine out at sea. Obviously, you've got a moving platform, the parts to get to are in an awkward position, you've got the waves and the surf beating against you, and at the same time, you're also thinking, we need to be getting to this casualty as soon as possible.
You've got to be careful not to drop anything, because the minute you've dropped it, that's it, it's gone. You're never going to find it again. So yeah, it's quite a stressful time to change the prop.
Is this the broken one?
Back at the harbour, unaware of the problems the lifeboat is experiencing, Pete decides that with a person in the water, there's no time to lose. And though he's retired from active lifeboat duty, he hasn't retired from saving lives.
I put the dog in the van and I grabbed my life jacket. I always keep a life jacket and a throw bag in the van just for occasions such as that.
He spots Simon, a local fisherman, moored in the outer harbour with his engine running, and commandeers his boat for an impromptu rescue.
Obviously we didn't know that the problems the inshore boat had, but yeah, it was just a wait and see, and if we could get over there, we would. And then it was a question then of waiting for the harbour bridge to be lifted to give him access to the inner harbour. You can't get the fishing boat through under the bridge. There isn't enough clearance for the boat to come through into the inner harbour.
But there's a problem. The harbour bridge cannot be raised if the wind speed is too high, and the weather is getting worse by the second.
We were wondering at the time whether the wind conditions were too severe for the bridge to be raised. There is a sort of limit. When you're in a situation like that, every few seconds seems like 10 minutes.
While Pete waits anxiously on the wrong side of the harbour bridge.
Anchor's still out.
Back on the ILB, Callum and the crew have finally managed to swap the broken propeller for the spare and are raising the anchor ready to roll.
It probably took us, oh, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes, but it felt like about 20.
I think probably a little bit of adrenaline helped us lift the anchor a bit quicker than normal.
Once it was fixed and we clunked it into gear, we had a little bit of forward drive, a lot more forward drive than we had before. So it was a huge relief. Then it was like, right, we can get going.
As the ILB races to make up for lost time. Back at the harbour, the wind has dropped enough for the bridge to be lifted, and Pete finally enters the inner harbour and heads to where the casualty is still desperately clinging to the mooring buoy.
Your ability to hold on in those conditions deteriorates quite rapidly with the cold. Things like cramp can set in. So speed was of the essence, really.
Out at sea, the ILB is almost at the harbour when the radio brings news that they're too late.
We arrived and saw the casualty sat on the back of the Coast Guard's truck with a blanket and that round him, getting warm. It was a huge relief.
Do you need anything else from us at the moment, or are you quite happy?
Quite happy, I think, just waiting for the ambulance.
Tidy.
We'd heard that Dad was doing something in the harbour to try and help out, but we hadn't realised he'd got a few of the local fishermen together and they'd gone and done the rescue.
Pete had managed to untangle the casualty, pull him up onto the fishing boat, then ferry him across to the waiting Coast Guard on the harbour wall.
If he'd have let go, you know, he would probably have sunk.
The Coast Guard team warm up the casualty, carry out a series of medical checks, then finally give him the all clear.
I think it shows the collective spirit of, you know, maritime people that, you know, if someone's in trouble, everyone drops everything what they're doing to go and assist someone. And, you know, Simon and Pete did a fantastic job that day.
You go in to do a rescue and there's another family member already there doing the rescue. I've never heard of that one before.
Rescued by your dad.
All right. If the same situation happened again, I wouldn't think twice. You know, you just go for it, and if the rescue boat gets there first, it gets there first. You know, the important thing is to deal with the situation. Who deals with it doesn't really matter as long as it's dealt with successfully.
The casualty, Keith, had been heading over to his brother's boat to help with some routine maintenance when he slipped into the water and found himself desperately clinging onto a mooring buoy.
When I went into the sea, I was fully clothed, boots, jeans. Whilst in the water, I was totally helpless. The cold was biting at me. My arms were getting very, very, very tired, and I was beginning to wonder whether I was going to actually survive this situation. I think it goes without any shadow of a question that had Peter and his actions not got there on the day, I probably definitely wouldn't be sat here talking into this camera now. I wouldn't have survived because that's how serious the situation had become.
I think Dad, if you asked him whether he saved his life, he'd be pretty modest. Yeah, he never admits to things like that.
I think it's safe to say that I don't know, we stopped the situation deteriorating any further.
Just under 70 miles north by northwest of Rhyl, in the middle of the Irish Sea, is the self-governing dependency of the Isle of Man.
The Isle of Man has the oldest parliament in the world. It's got its own currency, has its own language and its own laws here, which broadly follow England and Wales, but they are unique to the island.
The scenery, the views, it all sort of melts together to make the island just like a really nice place.
Halfway down the east coast is Douglas, the island's largest town and capital, and also the birthplace of the RNLI.
The Douglas Lifeboat Station was the first lifeboat station. It was the founding station. The institution is 200 years old. It was formed in 1824.
The Institute's founder, Sir William Hillary, lived in Douglas, in a house overlooking the bay from which he witnessed firsthand the dangers of the sea.
There's a small rocky outcrop in Douglas Bay called the Conister Rock or St Mary's Isle, which Sir William identified as a place that boats were getting sort of stuck on when they came in and maybe misnavigated the entrance into Douglas. So he raised enough money to build the Tower of Refuge.
The Tower of Refuge is exactly that. It's just it looks like a small castle which is built on Conister Rock.
When ships were dashed on those rocks, it was somewhere for them to remain until the weather was more favourable for them to be rescued.
And then realised that he'd need a lifeboat to go get them people and started Douglas and then start the institution.
And there's been a lifeboat stationed here ever since.
The present station is situated in the outer harbour, looking out onto Douglas Bay.
So Douglas Station has a Mersey-class lifeboat, which is an all-weather lifeboat.
It's very shallow draft, so it's handy for getting into tight spots really around the coast, especially the rugged areas. We can get in quite close.
We get quite strong winds here, and in strong winds, the coastline becomes even more dangerous because if for any reason you're unable to get where you need to be, you become very exposed to the wind pushing you into the coastline and into any rocks and things.
You just don't know what you're going to get when you go out.
Mid-November, grey, windy, temperature almost in single digits.
So it was a fairly bleak November day here that day. Sea state wasn't great, a south-southeasterly force 6 or 7 with some gusts up to a force 8.
It was kind of lunchtime. I literally just made a sandwich, sat down and took a bite out of it when the pager went off. I jumped in my car, drove down to the station, and Ed Coxon told me to get my gear on.
An emergency call has come in from a fisherman whose boat has caught fire.
When you hear it's a fire on board, then your hackles on the back of your neck go up a little bit.
If your boat's on fire, you've got nowhere to go apart from in the water, which is less than ideal. So to hear fire on a fishing boat especially, you know, there's so much going on that you don't know what you're going to get to.
Knowing that the boat was a fishing vessel as well, and knowing these guys are local, you want to bring them home quickly.
Just over 10 minutes after the pager sounded, the crew launched the all-weather boat and head to location at speed.
So as soon as our boat was in the water, I spoke with the Marine Operations Centre here in Douglas. There was no communication available to the fishing vessel, as due to the engine fire, they'd lost their electronic setup, so they'd lost the radio.
Where's the boat?
So if we can't communicate with the vessel themselves, they can't relay information back to us. So whether that be that the fire is not under control after all, whether that be that their position is changing due to the weather and the tide, they can't give us that update. So it makes the situation a little bit more tricky.
It's going to be 2 miles off the land, I don't think it is.
Though the casualty vessel has lost its radio, the skipper has managed to call the harbour on his mobile phone and report that the fire is now out, but they've lost all power and are totally at the mercy of the sea.
So the position we were given was probably about a mile and a half east of Douglas.
The weather that afternoon was very windy and quite choppy seas.
What's going through our mind as crew at that point is, depending on how far off the land they are, the wind is going to push them quite quickly.
Obviously, on that day, with the wind being as strong as it was in quite a real possibility that they could have been getting dangerously close to the rocks. It's a bit daunting knowing that we're going to a vessel without power. You know, we've got to make sure that when we get there, we get this vessel under tow as soon as possible so that we can start to bring them away from the danger. That's when I started setting up the tow line so that when we got there, we could get it straight under tow and start bringing it back.
Around 20 minutes after launch, The crew spot the fishing vessel rolling helplessly on the waves and nowhere near its reported position.
They drifted a good mile and a half north of their position. Luckily, the visibility was favourable that day, so we spotted them and we proceeded to the scene. We got close enough to talk to them, basically, or shout to them. It was quite windy, so we were shouting, but they had no communication.
They were absolutely satisfied. Their fire was completely out, completely extinguished. So the fire was not a problem from our point of view. It was more that they now had no power and they just needed assistance to get back to harbour.
With the fire out and the casualties unharmed, the lifeboat crew prepare a tow line to stop the fishing boat drifting onto the rocks.
It was beam on to the waves, which means it was side onto the waves, basically. It was rocking and rolling all over the place.
There's challenges of establishing a tow on a vessel that's got a considerable weight and ensuring that we do so safely.
Watch yourself. Is that bad?
I asked Jock to do it. Jock's a mariner, so yeah, he was the best man for the job.
There's a lot of challenges in trying to get a heaving line onto a casualty. Both vessels will be moving in different directions, up and down, sideways. Got to take the wind into consideration as well. And a little bit of luck involved, usually, in getting a heaving line, certainly on the first throw.
The reason that throw needs to be perfect first time is to stop the risk of it getting wrapped in our props, because if it gets wrapped in our props, then that's us dead in the water as well as them dead in the water, which is not in a position that we want to be in. Jock's throw was, I couldn't describe it with anything short of perfect. He got it straight to them. It was textbook. He literally could not have done that throw any better in them conditions. That's all the way round.
The crew set the tow line at its maximum length of 200 metres and turned for home into worsening seas and winds now gusting up to 30 miles an hour.
Hold on, hold on, hold on!
The conditions on the way back with the casualty in tow were certainly worse than they were on the way out.
The tow was probably close to the limits of what the Mersey could handle in those conditions. This was a difficult tow. It was the most difficult I've encountered yet in my career as a coxswain. You can't train for this. We can't train for a rough weather tow because it's too risky.
Averaging barely 3 knots, it takes the lifeboat nearly 3 hours to get back to Douglas Harbour, by which time the light is beginning to fade.
Right, another short in, guys.
We don't want to risk that tow line breaking near Conister Rock. The rock's right outside the harbour. But with the weather conditions, we couldn't physically tow them in on a long tow.
The lifeboat inches closer to the shelter of the harbour, the huge waves against the dead weight of the stricken fishing boat holding it back. Until finally, they make it into calmer waters.
When we eventually got into Douglas Harbour, there is a great sense of relief that we've got back, everyone's safe. Looking back at a shout like that, there's a great deal of satisfaction, I think, because we worked well as a crew, went out there and got the casualty back to port without any issues.
So if they hadn't been able to get that fire under control, we could have arrived potentially to a ball of flames and the crew in the water trying to swim away from it.
It's a nice feeling to bring someone home. The fishing community are needed, they're hard-working, and they're a big part of the community. Fishing boats have been lost, unfortunately. It's nice to have a good outcome to bring these chaps home to their families.
"280 miles to the southeast, in the historic Kentish town of Gravesend, is one of 4 inland stations based on the River Thames.
So Gravesend's area of operation is 26 miles from point to point. We're within one of the UK's biggest ports. As you go up the river, it changes from that commercial industrial into residential. We've got several yacht clubs, we've got rowing clubs, there's the Thames Path which covers the whole of our area.
Because of the high density of people and the various dangers of the river, the Gravesend Lifeboat Station operates in a very different way from its coastal counterparts.
Gravesend is a permanently manned station. It means that the crew actually work and live on the station as opposed to being elsewhere, going about their daily jobs and then responding to a pager.
We literally have a red phone that will ring, and then someone was taking down the information while the others are changing, and then we're off within 90 seconds, hopefully.
If it was a traditional pager station like we have around the UK and Ireland, we wouldn't be able to meet those attendance times. And yes, it is only a river, but minutes matter.
Jason, the station manager, has been at Gravesend since it opened in 2002.
I am the longest standing crew member at Gravesend. Yeah, I'm a lot greyer than what I was when I started. I've seen Gravesend develop as a station from its inception, from 3 porter cabins with 1 plastic chair, a telephone and a kettle, to where we are today.
All right, guys, going anywhere nice?
The transformation has been absolutely amazing. Really, really proud to play a part of it. Just a small part, but a part of it.
Okay, this is one of the bunk rooms that we've got. The volunteers rest at night, those on night shifts, to make sure that they're fully rested for work.
People who look at the River Thames, especially our area, can look across on a nice sunny day and it'll be benign. But you need to imagine that there is 4 knots of current on a good day running through that river.
And then in here is just a normal domestic style kitchen. So we do cook together, we eat together. Christmas dinners cooked and prepared all in here. You can definitely judge a crew member on their team-making abilities. If we end up anywhere near skimmed alive, then I'm afraid I have to go through a review with them.
The crews work rolling 12-hour shifts, ready to respond immediately to every emergency.
The tide is moving really fast, so there's lots of obstructions under the water, so you just get dragged down and then away you go.
Until the bell goes and the coxswain tells you what the shout is, you can't predict what exactly it is you're going out to.
Late summer, Thursday afternoon, Jason, Steve and Eamon launch the station's Atlantic 85 and head out on a routine patrol.
We was just launching on exercise when we noticed that there was some Port of London Authority admin staff walking down the brow with some Kent Wildlife Rescue individuals, all carrying nets.
Out of curiosity, we just turned around to them and said, you know, what's going on? And the ladies turned around and said there was an injured swan just down from the lifeboat station.
Do you want me to get in? No, you're all right.
One of the ladies said she was fully prepared to get into the river to rescue this swan. Myself, Jason and Steve were immediately, oh, no, you're not. No, we'll help.
Though the lifeboat crew's main priority is saving human lives, saving an animal's life can often amount to the same thing.
The main reason we help animals is the fact that we don't want the owners or anybody else that wants to do a good deed from entering the water or entering the mud.
9 times out of 10, the animal self-rescues, and the person that goes in to rescue that animal, unfortunately, doesn't come back out.
Do you want to pass us the net and see whether we could...
Though the crew have never trained to rescue a swan, they're prepared to give it a go.
And that swan will fit lovely in there, will it?
We were a bit perplexed on how we might actually rescue this swan, because we didn't really have any equipment on board the lifeboat for swan rescue.
Once you get it over, you only need to trap the head, that's as much as you need. So, just so long as you get it over the head, it can't go anywhere or do anything else. It will struggle, but you just got to drag it in.
Grab it by the neck and then lift it up and lift your arm underneath it. Yeah, pick it up.
Did you hear that, Steve? I've got to net it, you've got to grab it. We're not really specifically trained for swan rescues. The only transferable skills that I've got in netting is netting my lovely wife.
Armed with their small net and a lesson from the wildlife experts on how to catch a swan, the crew head around the pier where they can see a large flock on the mudbank.
It was difficult at the start to identify which actual swan we were going for.
See which one it is?
But it soon became very apparent that because of this swan's injuries, it had been flapping around in the mud. So all the other swans were nice, pristine and white, and the one we were after was covered in mud.
Don't go across the mud, don't go across the mud.
It was sort of staggering around a lot, and it would sort of every so often it would sort of stand up and then just flop back on its back.
When it's really ready.
We'd have a couple of tries of actually netting the swan from the lifeboat. Just hold it there, mate, because that flock might bring it back out.
Yeah, the swan was definitely giving us a run around, and especially Eamon, who was on the helm. You know, we were saying, come on, I thought you were supposed to be a professional boat driver, you know, let's get on with this. So.
Okay, mate, I'm just gonna steer it on with my net.
Although the rib is very manoeuvrable, it's not as manoeuvrable as a swan.
It's gonna make a break for it. It's evaded us.
The swan obviously wasn't wanting to be rescued, not by a big orange boat that probably looked a bit sort of intimidating to it. So we had to really come up with another plan of action.
It's just going to go up there.
We managed to shepherd it back towards the other group of swans, but then it sort of sat in between the no man's land of where the water meets the mud, and it became apparent that we're probably going to have to put somebody ashore.
As the crew are kitted up in dry suits specifically designed to operate in mud and water, they put Steve ashore to lead the land-based part of the rescue.
No, I've never attended a swan rescue before, no. This is a first. The only things I knew about swans were that the Queen owns all of them, as far as I'm aware, and they can be quite dangerous. They have been known to break people's arms.
I'm just going to put my gloves on just in case I do commit. The plan was, when we got close to the swan, I was going to distract the swan so it was focusing its attention on me and the other swans. So basically I was the rodeo cowboy, so I distracting the wild, crazy animals, while Steve crept up behind it. I seem to be drawing the crowds at least.
There was a large crowd gathering. I think they were finding it rather funny, and obviously there was lots of mobile phones out filming it all. Yeah, so it was... yeah, it added to the pressure, because we obviously had to rescue the swan then.
That's hard standing there. So I got out of the lifeboat. At the corner of my eye, I could see Steve purposefully walking towards me. I was quite scared myself, seeing Steve with a net with that look on his face. He was determined.
The boat was slowly sort of corralling it up the shore towards where I was, and literally at the moment, I thought, right, it's now or never. Literally sort of 2 steps forward. Down came the net, and there we go, swan was under net.
There was a whoosh, and that whoosh was the speed of Steve's net. I've never seen anything as quick as that. And then I just doubled up with my net on top, just to make sure that the swan wasn't going anywhere.
We don't want to let it go.
No, whatever you do, don't let it go.
Put your net in the net,
That's right, we can carry it in the net. That's right, we've got a...
The people from Kent Wildlife Rescue came down with theirs, looked like a straitjacket almost.
Yeah, it goes over. Just keeps them tight so that they don't hurt themselves flapping their wings and stuff.
I did gently stroke the swan's head just to sort of comfort it a little bit. And I was chatting to it, make sure it was all right.
Steve and Jason hand the Swan over to the wildlife rescue team and return to the boat to continue their routine exercise.
More than welcome.
Once the Kent Wildlife Rescue had got the Swan, I returned to the boat to head off back on exercise, and Kent Wildlife Rescue took the Swan away to their sanctuary.
A shout like that, you do feel like, yeah, you've made a difference. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's a person or an animal. You do feel like you made a difference. I love animals, more so than some people. So for that, it was good to have a really good outcome. Following the incident, there is a rumour that Steve has become the Swan Whisperer. And I can't confirm or deny this, but there's a pair of swan slippers in his locker.
No, I'm not a Swan Whisperer. It was just an animal in distress that we rescued. I think that's just a nickname everybody's given me, and I'm sure it'll stick around for a fair while.
After her ordeal on the cliffs of Swanage, Polly is now on the mend. Both she and her husband, Hugh, are determined to stay positive about their experience.
You know, I don't believe in fate and all that. I'm not superstitious. I see the accident as a bit of really bad luck, but I see the way I came out of it as a bit of really good luck. And the help I had, that wasn't about luck. That was about people giving up their own time to rescue me.
And putting themselves at risk in doing that.
Yes.
I think really fortunately, we're both absolutely desperate to get back to climbing and climbing with each other. Because one of my fears, once I knew Polly was going to be okay physically, was, you know, will she want to climb again?
I might feel more nervous, especially when I go down that first abseil. But I know I'll be fine, and yeah, I just really want to get back to it. I love climbing there. It's where I first fell in love with outdoor climbing, so I want to go back there, really.
We just need the rain to wash the blood off the rock first.
Yeah, apparently it's still there.
And after the Swan, rescued by Jason and Steve at Gravesend, was treated for a viral condition which affected its movement, it is now a healthy, full-time resident of the Surrey Swan Sanctuary.
Which one do you think it is?
I reckon it's that one right there.
The one with the long neck and the orange beak?
Yeah, the white one.
Good call, mate, good call. I reckon it'd be better off here in the sanctuary than out on the river.
Well, most definitely, yeah.
They'll look really happy here, don't they?
Yeah, they'll have a better life here than on the Thames.
Definitely.
Well, our part of the Thames anyway.
Maybe you should move down here, Steve.
This is pitch dark, but you now need to find people that you believe are currently still alive, and you need to find them whilst they still are.
No, on your back. On your back.
This is going to be a massive challenge.
He's so exhausted from the rip current. He had nothing left.